So what have I said a million times? The number one goal of a defendant. I say it here, I say it on media, I say it on TV, I say it to my kids, though they don't fully understand what I'm saying. Here's the number one goal if you're a federal defendant. You don't make matters worse. So many defendants become wrapped up in this system and then they double down on the bad decision making. It's one thing to make bad choices as a human being. We all do them. Some of those choices become criminal. And through this introspective process, we would hope a defendant would say, hey, I don't want to double down here and get taken into custody and fight my case from the detention center where Epstein hung himself. Let's make better choices. But oh, no, 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 no. Bankman-Fried, unfortunately, he's going down the different path, the path of unable to get through to him. So either his lawyers, I don't even want to say the lawyers are to blame. Here's why. Our message at White Collar Advice follows. Here it is. It's always your fault if you're the defendant. It's always your fault. Until you accept responsibility for your own life, it ain't never going to get better. And you can continue to let the Department of Justice manage your reputation, advance their agenda to send you to prison. Then you can sit on the inside of that detention center complaining, looking back and saying, I certainly would have done some things differently. Now, I'm going to get into the witness tampering case here in a moment, and Judge Kaplan deciding that he's going to be going to the big house for a while, and apparently because he's going to trial, and if he loses, he might not see freedom again 10, 15, 20 years. Indeed, the only good news that comes from losing this hearing today follows. At least he's going to begin to get more credit for time served. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of upside because he has chosen to not learn from others who have come before him. I've said in YouTube videos and elsewhere that a number of Bankman-Fried's associates have reached out to me. Hey, I'm watching your videos. I'm relaying some of them to Sam. Can you answer some questions for you? I got 3 of them earlier this week, people asking to hop on the phone with me, and I always respond the same way. I love that you want to support your friend and you want to help him, but here's the deal. He's got to do the work. He's got to be on the call. He's got to be the one to invest the time. So no, I'm not speaking with you. I'll speak with him and tell him what he's doing wrong. And they all said the same thing. He has pretrial restrictions that do not allow him to speak with you. But other than that, he would love to. Oh, really? Does that make any sense, considering he apparently spent more than 20 minutes 100 times on calls with the New York Times? So he can speak to the Times in an effort to defend apparently his reputation, and in so doing jeopardize the case, threatening others, taking him to prison, but he can't hop on a call to learn about the power of advocacy. I would have told them, or I would have said to Bankman, you don't defend your reputation by hopping on the phone with the New York Times, which is exactly what Elizabeth Holmes did in her disastrous, horrendous, awful interview where she claimed to reinvent herself. The same path. Remember that video I filmed, Elizabeth Holmes, Sam Bankman-Fried, 2 peas in a pod? They ain't no difference. No difference not learning from others who have come before them. The way that you defend your reputation, Mr. Fried, isn't by speaking to the New York Times, who, guess what? Guess what? They have an agenda. Everyone has an agenda. What's the agenda of the New York Times, who I loved is coming to his defense to the court, articulating they're jeopardizing his right to free speech? They no care. No media doesn't care. You know what they want? They want viewers. They want marketing dollars. They want media. They want more people to read it. Bankman-Fried didn't consider the stakeholders in this case. The government, the prosecutor, who wanted him in prison, he's going to get it, didn't understand the atmospherics of being out on $250 million bond and what that means, the severity of that, and the likelihood at any moment he could get remanded to custody. You know what he probably told himself? Ain't going to happen to me. I used to be on a yacht with Tom Brady, with Shaq and others. Ain't going to be me. I'm different. I didn't have bad intentions. It was other people managing this show, not me. I'm not going to go to prison. I'm all good. And I ain't got time to hop on the phone with some dude at White Collar Advice to talk about advocacy and accepting responsibility and mitigating and maybe getting a job for minimum wage. That's beneath him. But it was okay to hop on the phone more than 100 times for the New York Times and witness tamper against his former girlfriend and co-defendant, who's celebrating right now. So let me tell you what happens when defendants continue to get themselves in trouble. They go into party time mode. So while Sam Bankman-Fried's about to go into detention, his ex-girlfriend, she's popping the champagne, the Cristal, whatever it is they like. She's living the high life again for a few minutes and thinking, yes, he continues to make decisions that's going to get him on a path to a 10 and 20-year federal prison sentence. And in so doing, she's going to get the coveted 5K1 letter. Or as my kids would tell you, the Willy Wonka the Willy Wonka golden ticket to get a shorter federal prison sentence. It's tragic, though. Santayana, the philosopher, said, those who do not understand history are deemed to repeat it. And here we are. And I empathize with his family. I empathize with him to a degree because he was living with his head in the sand like the ostrich, pretending that there was no fear around him. Pretending that he was different. But he is not. You are no different than the white-collar criminal, as I was, who thinks the decisions they make are not applicable to them. And I learned the hard way, and I didn't begin to get it in prison. Maybe he'll get it while sitting in that detention center. Let's see. Now, I'm using my trusted screen share here. I'm going to go through a few things that I think are both sad, humorous, and also informative as we decide or assess what happens next for Bankman-Fried. As I articulated earlier, his trial, we know, is starting October 2nd. And one of the hugest downsides to going to prison right now, like, it's very difficult to fight your case from a detention center. I mean, he was home, living in the parents' big house, calls with the lawyers, the meetings, the comfort, the lattes, the meals. They're waiting on him hand over fist. Mr. Bankman, yes, we'll get so-and-so lawyer on the phone with you. It is fundamentally different when you are trying to do this in custody. Sure, he'll be able to visit, though it's fundamentally different in the orange uniform and while sitting in a detention center. Sure, he will have phone calls that aren't recorded inside of his case manager or counselor's office, but it's just absolutely different. I don't even know if he'll have access to email. He probably won't. And I know sending emails from the inside of a federal prison, they're not protected. It's not privileged, so anything can be read. It is a horrific decision. The choices he made were awful. It's going to make it harder to fight his case. I know his lawyers argued, given all the voluminous paperwork, it would be very difficult to fight the case from a detention center, which is why his lawyers probably should have said to him the Justin Paperny advice that I opened up with 7 minutes ago. Do you know what your goal right now is, Bankman-Fried? Do you understand what success is for you? Can you even identify success? If they had that call or conversation with him, or if they reached out to someone on our team, it would have gone something like this. Do not make matters worse. Shut your mouth. Say nothing. Take it like a big boy. You'll eventually get your reputation back. Others have done it. So can you. Don't make matters worse. And go get a job and do something productive to demonstrate to Judge Kaplan you can earn money as a law-abiding citizen. Can you do that, Mr. Bankman-Fried? Or is it the enablers, the yes people who tell him exactly what he wants to hear, including many of the people who reached out to me? Sam didn't have bad intentions. He'd hop on the phone with you, but it was pre-trial. Just give me the information and I'll relay it to him. What are you, his conduit, his influencer? You're doing more work on his behalf than him. No one should work harder in a criminal case than the defendant. That much ain't the lawyers. They're getting paid a whole lot of money. Can only imagine how much they're getting paid. The lawyers can't work harder than the defendant. His friends, God love them, who reach out to me can't work harder than him. His parents, I presume, are working harder than he did. He's going to feel the brunt of it in a detention center, and it ain't no country club. Many of you hear, these white-collar criminals, Martha Stewart, Justin Paperny, and others go to this country club in a minimum security camp. He's going to a detention center where you are confined and locked up. It is fundamentally different than the cushy conditions of a camp with a track and the dorm, camp control, the chow hall, the library. He's going to be in detention, and he may be there until this case is complete. Continuing on, since his arrest, he's been out on a $250 million bail package. Pretrial hearings related to the ex-billionaires continues dealing with the press exchanges with the Justice Department categorizes as a pattern of witness tampering and evading his bail conditions. Judge Kaplan previously issued a direct and stern warning to Bankman-Fried in July over his conversations with the media. Let's talk about that for a moment. The judge gave him kind of like a warning, and not all defendants get warnings. And I would even argue the judge showed him some deference and kindness in July by not taking him in. I can tell you my co-defendant, Keith, who was cooperating against me, don't blame him. He had a wife and 4 young children he wanted to get home to. While he was on pretrial, he did something wrong. They immediately took him into custody. Judge Stephen Wilson, our judge, gave him one chance. He said, you're a 2-time loser now. You pled guilty. You're a criminal. You did it again. Have a nice day. I'll see you on the other side. So this judge gave Bankman-Fried an opportunity and said, I'm warning you. Instead, he doubles down. He continues to make matters worse. Now, let me tell you why this is impactful if he's convicted and when he gets sentenced. Post-offense conduct is a really big deal. Let me tell you what I mean. You have the actual offense. I broke the law. I did bad things. Then you have the offense after the offense. Martha Stewart, as we know, went to prison not for insider trading, for obstruction, for lying. So he is continuing to show that he has a history of bad decision making. He is unable to make better decisions. So if he ever faces a sentencing hearing, it is illogical now for his lawyers to argue what so many lawyers argue, which is what? It was out of character. He didn't mean to do it. He was swept into this. It was a lot of pressure. He trusted on paid experts and advisors to help guide him. In retrospect, he could have done some things differently. Here's the problem with that argument. And while Judge Kaplan will say, please sit down, that no working in this courtroom, because one, he's so young at 31 now, he has no other work history, which is why he should be working. But he is maybe driving for Uber is beneath him. I have clients in Northern California, MBAs, Harvard, Yale, Dartmouth. They deliver bread and food at 4 o'clock in the morning. You want to know why? It's a paycheck and it's work and it helps them build a new record. He has chosen not to do this. So Judge Kaplan is not going to buy into this argument that it's out of character. You know what judges tend to tell defendants who continue to make bad choices? This is your character to make bad choices. Don't tell me it's out of character. This is your character to swindle and cheat and cover up and think you're better than other people, and you ignore orders that I gave you. Not this time. You're going into custody. It's a shame. It's a shame. Let's continue here for a few more moments as we come back to the New York Times. Whether you like them or not, they had an agenda to get this coverage and do so in a way that would ensure hopefully people come back to read their newspaper. And this is what I find interesting. In the motion requesting Bankman-Fried's detention, the government said that over the last several months, the defendant had sent over 100 emails to the media and had more than 1,000 phone calls to members of the press. The final straw, according to prosecutors, was Bankman-Fried leaking private diary entries of his ex-girlfriend. Again, she's partying right now. She's like, put the diary out there. It's fine. I'm a convicted felon. I'm all over the internet as a criminal. Put the diary out there. Put my dirty secrets out there. It's all good. Now, Carolyn Ellison can make the argument, not only has she endured the fallout and the collateral consequences of a felony conviction, the embarrassment of potentially going to prison, now her lawyers can build into their sentencing memorandum, and she will articulate to a probation officer and judge the pain and trauma and heartache and embarrassment of having this case come back to life by her ex-boyfriend, putting all of this out online to the New York Times and for others to. She's partying right now. No, don't feel sad for her. This is a good day for her, because it's going to help her get a shorter federal prison sentence. And I do hearken back to his friends who reach out to me to say that his bail conditions don't allow him to speak to people on the phone, unless apparently it's the New York Times and other media outlets where he wants to hop on the phone to repair his reputation. You don't let media repair your reputation. You don't let the Department of Justice repair your reputation when they're out to get you. You repair the reputation one day at a time, one word at a time, by building. That's a message he didn't seem to get. Let's continue. The prosecution said, faced with a series of conditions meant to limit the defendant's use of the internet and the phone, the defendant pivoted to in-person machinations. The prosecution said of Bankman-Fried, who revised bail conditions include restricted internet access and a ban from smartphone use. The government added that Bankman-Fried had over 100 calls with one of the authors of the Times prior to publication, many of which lasted for approximately 20 minutes. Now, let's come back for a moment to Elizabeth Holmes. She had that horrific, awful piece in the New York Times. Last year, white collar advice, if you were to Google white collar advice and Justin Paperny, white collar advice and Michael Santos, my partner, you would see a very lengthy spread from the New York Times. Our team worked on that with the Times for like 2 years. I'm getting to a point here, bear with me. Prior to the New York Times publishing this article on our company, we reviewed it. They did a fact check. We were involved in it. We understood what they were producing because we had to confirm it. We were on the phone with like 5 fact checkers. Elizabeth Holmes did the same thing before that article came out where she's trying to rebrand. She approved it as well. Hence the video I filmed, Elizabeth Holmes approved this message. Bankman-Fried, in communicating with the Times in a fact-checking aspect and going through it, approved everything that was going to or that was disseminated. He approved it. He was aware of it. Why did he approve it? Why did he share it? Not because he was thinking of avoiding prison, not because he was thinking of getting the shortest possible prison sentence, not because he was concerned about people in FTX who lost money or the alleged looting that he did from Alameda. No, it's not about them. Nope, it's not about them. God forbid we care about the people who lost money. God forbid we care about the victims here. Let's not do that. He did all of this and approved it and facilitated it and spent time on the phone. Why? For his reputation under the guise of free speech. That is so insane and so illogical that I'm struggling to embrace it, but I shouldn't struggle to embrace it because I've been in this game since I went to prison in 2008, and I can empathize to a degree because I made really dumb, stupid decisions. I made choices in retrospect that I would do differently, but there is so much evidence out there, forgive the spitting, so many opportunities for him to have done better. And you know what's funny? We have people in our community who have federal public defenders. They have 3 cents left to their name. They get a court-appointed lawyer, but they're willing to do the things that Sam Bankman-Fried are unwilling to do. He's got the money for the big lawyers, outsource the work. People in our community with the federal public defender, nothing left, are willing to do the work. Minimum wage job, develop relationships, volunteer work, demonstrate how and why they're going to make amends to victims. They are authentic. They are genuine. They do the work. He's chosen not to do that. Incredible. And I also empathize with his parents who love and support him as my parents love and supported me. And it will be difficult for him to be across country in a prison when they see him in that filthy detention center. And that is real. That is real jail. I think I'm going to do some media tomorrow around the living conditions in a detention center compared to a camp and what's next for him and the difficulty he'll face fighting a case. It's difficult. As we wrap up this story, the prosecution says has had to cull charges twice to comply with extradition agreement linked to the Bahamas, where Bankman-Fried was previously held in custody. The government told the judge in a letter that next week it plans to file a new superseding indictment. So that's kind of what we have, right? So it goes from, hey, this is, forgive me for the last portion of this, I didn't share the screen. This is what happens when you go live. Think about this for a moment. The charge, make matters worse, now he's in custody and more charges come. Of course, every defendant has the right to go to trial, though in my experience, unfortunately, so few people prevail when it's your name versus the United States of America. I did the CNBC piece yesterday on insider trading, and someone in the interview, a former SEC executive, was like, the government doesn't have enough resources to ferret out all fraud. It's an unfair fight. And I told the journalist at CNBC, is this guy living in la land, or has he been a bureaucrat in government for too long? That doesn't make any sense. The government has endless resources, and regardless of how much money you have, no defendant can compete against it, which is why it's partly so difficult to prevail. And yes, I'm sure there are some innocent people who plead guilty because the odds of prevailing at trial are so low. I said in a Fox News interview I did recently that at 30 years old, he had a choice. With the First Step Act, prison reform that passed, more reform that we think is coming, he had a choice where he could have said, okay, let me try to negotiate the best plea agreement possible. Even if it's 10 years, even if it's 15 years, I want all of you to know what that means thanks to the First Step Act that Trump signed in 2018. And by the way, many of you have asked if Trump is convicted. No, he's not eligible for the First Step Act, a law that he signed. He is not eligible based on the indictment and the charges. Even if he got 15 years with good time, First Step Act, halfway house, maybe the drug program that could take a year off a sentence, maybe it's 10 years. More reform could come. Now, I'm not saying 10 years is not a long time. If he got 15 years, if he got 10 years, he'd be home in like 5 or 6 years. Not saying it's not a long time, but he would have come home young enough. He still could, if he chooses to accept responsibility, he could still be a father, could still be a husband, can still build a new business. He still has more opportunities and privilege and benefits than the lion's share of people who serve time inside of these federal prisons. And instead of embracing that and recognizing it, he's squandering opportunities that so many people traversing the system don't have. Loving parents who put up money for a $250 million bond. Friends standing alongside him. I know because one just texted me, I'm watching your live video right now about Sam. I'm so bummed that he got into detention. What can I do to help him? We tried that path. It didn't work. He wouldn't get on the phone with me. He was too busy talking to the New York Times. I see your text. I'm reading it. It's too late. Opportunities that he wasted. And so many people in prison, you know what they think at times? Because I was there in federal prison, they say, man, if I just could afford one lawyer, if I could just like hire one lawyer, like I really wish my mom and dad would have been able to come up with money for bond, but they didn't have any money. So I was like taken into custody, or the prosecutor said that I was at risk and I couldn't make bail. So I've been in custody the whole time. They didn't give me a chance. Or yeah, I did something wrong on pretrial, but they immediately took me into custody. They didn't give me a warning like they did Bankman-Fried in July. Man, why did he waste these opportunities? He had it good. But this is what tends to happen. He'll recognize how good he had it in about 17 minutes when he's in that filthy detention center. when he's using the bathroom in front of dozens of people. I suppose it will be akin to what he endured in that Bohemian prison, probably, which is why I'm sure he was so thrilled to get out of that Bohemian prison, only to ruin it and double down and make matters worse. I'm going to close this live video. Are there any questions here? I see some comments. Yeah, let me wrap up this. Let me wrap up this live video here. I'm grateful for all of your attention. I'm grateful for it here. I will tell you, as someone who had privilege and opportunity and squandered it, and I went to prison, that prison can be a transformative and wonderful experience. I now have people who serve time with Elizabeth Holmes reaching out to me, knowing that I cover the case so extensively, asking if I can interview them. I'm not sure if I want to, though I will tell you many of them have said she's been productive in prison. She's not complaining. She's avoiding drama. She's teaching. I really love to hear that she's doing well. I don't know if I want to interview them and go down that path, but I hope it's true. I know Jennifer Shaw, our client from the Celebrity Housewives of Utah, is doing incredibly well at Bryan. They're finding perspective and learning. At least I can say that for Jennifer. I hope if Sam Bankman-Fried goes to federal prison, well, he's there now, he's going. I hope somehow, some way he can find perspective as I did. I hope he can learn, if he's convicted or pleads guilty, to invest the time to understand the motivations behind his choices and the choices themselves. I hope he takes the time to introspect and understand how his choices hurt people and created victims. And even if they get their money back, it doesn't change the pain and shame and loss of dignity they feel. I know that because I created victims. And even though they got their money back, I know they still feel that way. And I'm sorry. And 14 years later, I'm still working to make amends. We are all works in progress. Yet he thinks he's arrived. I would encourage him to read literature that relates to the life that he'd like to live when he comes home. I'd encourage him to work daily to prove worthy of the love and support of his family, of recognizing their suffering because of his own bad choices. And yet he continues to double down and triple down and hurt people. And guess what? And this is how I'll close. It's all his fault. At some point, I promise you, he's going to be in federal prison and he's going to look in the mirror. I was 30 when I went in. He's 31. I can relate to some of it. He's going to look in the mirror and say, I'm ready to get my life together. It's all my fault. And prisoners get there at different times. My business partner, Michael Santos, served 26 consecutive years in prison for a nonviolent drug crime. After he was convicted in 87 and sentenced to 45 years under the old law, a guard gave him a book, a philosophy book about Socrates, not taking the poison, and indeed said, I have to obey the laws of Greece, and I got to follow these rules, and I'm not escaping. I'm going to drink the poison. Might have died a martyr, but he died with integrity. That began to change his life. Bankman-Fried needs to think about how he can change his life. We all have that aha moment in prison. We all have it. Michael had it after he was convicted. I had it several months into my federal prison sentence when I saw dudes scared to death to go home, like freaked the F out to go home, as Fried's friend continues to text me. Scared to go home. Now, you might think of the character scared to go home as like Red from Shawshank Redemption. Yes, those guys are scared too. The guys that are often scared to go home is the guys serving 2, 3, or 4 years in federal prison. Doctor, lawyers, licenses, they've lost their license. What do they do next? And it hit me that I was on that same path, which enabled me to finally not think about Justin Paperny, who nobody cares about, but the people that I hurt. I hope that he gets there. To the question, that's all fair, but what can we do to prevent a culture of fraud like crypto moving forward? There needs to be consequences. And I'm not simply saying the consequence should be prison. I think we send people to prison for far too long in this country. And there are many judges at sentencing hearings, including Judge Boulware at a sentencing summit that I attended in San Diego last June, who said, I know many criminals go to a country club camp, and I don't view it as federal prison. I think the real collateral consequence is in prison, but the lasting consequence of breaking the law, the reputation, the licensing issues, the money, the depression, the emotional toll that comes with going to prison. So I think there should be significant consequences, but I do think people should be held accountable. In some cases like mine, no longer able to work in that industry. I filmed but didn't post something about Kim Kardashian, who admittedly I knew and for many years out in Calabasas. Didn't change that she posted on her Instagram that people should invest in a crypto token. She got paid $250. Her people who lionize and follow her invested. They, of course, lose money. She didn't disclose that she was paid $250,000 for this tweet. I don't think she should ever be able to talk about investments again because she didn't do her due diligence and people lost money. And she scratches a check for more than $1 million, which is nothing relative to what she earns. No different from when Goldman Sachs or Chase scratches checks for for $400 and $500 million to settle with the FTC and others. It's like 2 days of trading profit. So to your question, what do we do? Hold people accountable. But I'm not suggesting it should be lengthy times in federal prison, but they should be cut off from certain industries, just like I was cut off from my industry. There cannot be a two-tiered system of justice. Kim Kardashian should never be able to work in certain industries again or post certain things because of that tweet that cost people money. Hard to identify those victims. So that's all I'll say about how to ferret out crypto fraud moving forward. There should be some scrutiny around what people say, and there should be consequences if people engage in this conduct. Though I'm not simply suggesting it should be lengthy federal prison sentence, because oftentimes that's the easiest part of the sanction. Unless you're getting 5, 10, 15, 20 years, then it's really a stain. Then it's brutal. Then it's difficult. But people who get 3, 4 years in federal prison can get out much more quickly. I referenced the New York Times piece about my company, White Collar Advice. Read the article. In that article is Hugo Mejia, who went to prison for a crypto scheme. He got 36 months with good time and halfway house and the First Step Act. He was home in 10 months. I can tell you, Hugo's suffering wasn't the 10 months he served in a minimum security camp. It's rebuilding, no longer able to work in the crypto industry, repairing his reputation and rebuilding, living in the filthy halfway house in Riverside. He's not complaining. He's happy to be home. That's something I want to convey to all of you. It's not necessarily the time in prison that's difficult. It's coming home and rebuilding, starting from scratch. Any other, yes, someone commented on the New York prison one is the worst in the country. I know it's where Epstein went. Could he get killed before trial? No, another consequence to him going to this detention center is because it's so high profile, he may very well spend his time in segregation or the special housing unit. Oh, I can tell you there's nothing special about it. Thankfully, I never endured the shoe. My partner, Michael, I think was in 27 prisons over 26 years. They sent him to the hole at Lompoc for writing his great book called Inside Life Behind Bars in America. Great book. I think the Huffington Post said it's one of the top 10 prison books of all time. So if you're high profile like he is, and they don't want to have another Epstein problem on their hand, believe me, the DOJ in Manhattan, this Damian Williams prosecutor, has enough to worry about. So there's a very good chance they keep him isolated, which means he sits in like segregation, 23 hours a day in total lockup, like a concrete bunker. That's tough. You're getting out maybe 3 days a week, 4 days a week to shower for 15 minutes, exercise in your cell, push-ups, run in place. He'll look forward to the breaks to visit with his lawyers. So there's a very good chance that he's going to be kept maybe on suicide watch and segregation. And we know what happened with Epstein, and 2 guards didn't get, I think they got fired or sanctioned. They didn't go to prison for violating or breaking the logs to show they were looking at Epstein when they weren't. You can rest assured MDC is saying this: we do not want another Epstein on our hands. Get it together. This guy's going to be looked at 24 hours a day. So I don't think he's going to get killed. I suspect he'll be on suicide watch, and I suspect he'll be in segregation away from other prisoners that could extort him. There are all of these scams taking place inside of federal prisons. They're going to say something to him. Do you want more money on your books? Do you want a better Walkman? Do you want a pair of shoes? This is how you can get it. And so many prisoners make matters worse for themselves when they go to prison because they don't really understand the system of corrections. They seek to manipulate this environment before they fully understand it. And there are people like me who were used to getting like our way. If you had access and resources and you're just used to that lifestyle, then when you get to prison, there's a lot of guys who know that you are used to it and they want it and they can get it for you. So just like that, many prisoners begin engaging in a prison hustle, getting things they shouldn't. Then they become indebted to other people to pay them, getting money on their books, reaching out to mom and dad, send $400 via Venmo to this person. And it tends to go bad. And of course, they will be listening to his phone calls that are not with his lawyers. If he has access to email, those emails are recorded. Good old snail mail they can read as well. And they do, and there will be some visits eventually. I'm going to close finally how I opened. The number one goal of any federal defendant is not to make matters worse. And if you are a friend of Bankman-Fried and those who reach out and text me, I admire you for supporting your friend and trying to help him, but to a degree you enable him. To the person that said Sam can't work, to the person that said he can't reach out to you to get advocacy, to the person who said certain things he is unable to do because of the prolific nature of his case, nope. What you should have said to him was, dude, I support you. I want to help you, but you are making decisions that get you further away from what you want, which is the best possible outcome. You need truth tellers in your life if you're a defendant, not placaters. Is that even a word, placater? I think so. Or enablers who tell you what you want to hear because they're so in awe of who you were, the money you made, the deals you did, and you want a jet or boat with Tom Brady. Don't nobody care, and certainly they ain't going to care when he's at the detention center. I've really enjoyed our time together. More than 30 minutes in a random live video. I've enjoyed our time together. Thank you. If you find value in the White Collar Advice channel, please like, subscribe, and comment. And as we get more information, I will share it. And I'm so grateful you let me rattle on for 30 minutes and provide value from my perspective as someone who's traversed this system. Thank you. Please like and subscribe. Super grateful to have you here. Goodbye.